And let us finish this, the 21st chapter of A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens from the second book, The Golden Thread. And apologies for the noises outside this window. I hope they are not too distracting. This is the time that I have to record, and those are the noises that happen to be outside. So it sort of works. This is the storming of the Bastille. There are a lot of crazy noises. Now, the Bastille was, of course, a prison in Paris, and the siege of this Bastille is being led by the Defarges, the wife leading the women, and right now her husband has one of the Jacquerie and the turnkey, and is looking for a cell in the North Tower. I'll begin at the beginning of the paragraph where we cut off before. Through gloomy vaults where the light of day had never shone, past hideous doors of dark dens and cages, down cavernous flights of steps, and again up steep, rugged ascents of stone and brick, more like dry waterfalls than staircases, Defarge, the turnkey, and Jacques III, linked hand in arm, went with all the speed they could make. Here and there, especially at first, the inundations started on them, and swept by, but when they had done descending, and were winding and climbing up a tower, they were alone, hemmed in here by the massive thickness of walls and arches. The storm within the fortress and without was only audible to them in a dull, subdued way, as if the noise out of which they had come had almost destroyed their sense of hearing. The turnkey stopped at a low door, put a key in a clashing lock, swung the door slowly open, and said, as they all bent their heads and passed in, 105 North Tower. There was a small, heavily grated, unglazed window high on the wall with a stone screen before it, so that the sky could only be seen by stooping low and looking up. There was a small chimney, heavily barred across, a few feet within. There was a heap of old feathery wood ashes on the hearth. There was a stool and table and a straw bed. There were the 4 blackened walls and a rusted iron ring in one of them. "Pass the torch slowly along these walls, that I may see them," said Defarge to the turnkey. The man obeyed, and Defarge followed the light closely with his eyes. "Stop! Look here, Jacques." "A-M," croaked Jacques III as he read greedily. "Alexander Manette," said Defarge in his ear, following the letters with his swart forefinger deeply ingrained with gunpowder. "And here he wrote, a poor physician, and it was he, without doubt, who scratched a calendar on this stone. What is in your hand? A crowbar? Give it to me." He had still the line stock of his gun in his own hand. He made a sudden exchange of the 2 instruments, and turning to the worm-eaten stool and table, beat them to pieces in a few blows. "Hold the light higher," he said wrathfully to the turnkey. "Look among those fragments with care, Jacques, and see. Here is my knife," throwing it to him. "Rip open that bed and search the straw. Hold the light higher, you." With a menacing look at the turnkey, he crawled upon the hearth, and peering up the chimney, struck the prize at its sides with the crowbar, and worked at the iron grating across it. In a few minutes some mortar and dust came dropping down, which he averted his face to avoid. And in it, and in the old wood ashes, and in a crevice in the chimney into which his weapon had slipped or wrought itself, he groped with a cautious touch. Nothing in the wood, and nothing in the straw. "Jacques, nothing. Let us collect them together, in the middle of the cell. So, light them, you." The turnkey fired the little pile, which blazed high and hot. Stooping again to come out of the low arched door, they left it burning and retraced their way to the courtyard, seeming to recover their sense of hearing as they came down, until they were in the raging flood once more. They found it surging and tossing in quest of Defarge himself. St. Antoine was clamorous to have its wine-shop keeper foremost in the guard upon the governor, who had defended the Bastille and shot the people. Otherwise the governor would not be marched to the Hôtel de Ville for judgment. Otherwise the governor would escape, and the people's blood, suddenly of some value after many years of worthlessness, be unavenged, in the howling universe of passion and contention that seemed to encompass this grim old officer, conspicuous in his grey coat and red decoration, there was but one quite steady figure, and that was a woman's. "See, there is my husband," she cried, pointing him out. "See, Defarge!" She stood immovable, close to the grim old officer, and remained immovable, close to him, remained immovable, close to him through the streets, as Defarge and the rest bore him along, remained immovable, close to him when he had got near his destination and began to be struck at from behind, remained immovable, close to him when the long gathering rain of stabs and blows fell heavy, was so close to him when he dropped dead under it that, suddenly animated, she put her foot upon his neck, and with her cruel knife, long ready, hewed off his head. The hour was come when Saint Antoine was to execute his horrible idea of hoisting up men for lamps, to show what he could be and do. Saint Antoine's blood was up, and the blood of tyranny and domination by the iron hand was down, down on the steps of the Hôtel de Ville, where the governor's body lay, down on the sole of the shoe of Madame Defarge, where she had trodden on the body to steady it from mutilation. "Lower the lamp yonder," cried Saint Antoine, after glaring round for a new means of death. "Here is one of the soldiers to be left on guard." The swinging sentinel was posted, and the sea rushed on, the sea of black and threatening waters, and the destructive upheavings of wave against wave, whose depths were yet unfathomed and whose forces were yet unknown, the remorseless sea of turbulently swaying shapes, voices of vengeance, and faces hardened in the furnaces of suffering, until the touch of pity could make no mark on them. But in the ocean of faces, where every fierce and furious expression was in vivid life, there were two groups of faces, each 7 in number, so fixedly contrasting with the rest, that never did sea roll which bore more memorable wrecks with it. 7 faces of prisoners, suddenly released by the storm that had burst their tomb, were carried high overhead, all scared, all lost, all wondering and amazed, as if the last day were come, and those who rejoiced around them were lost spirits. Other 7 faces there were, carried higher, 7 dead faces whose drooping eyelids and half-seen eyes awaited the last day, impassive faces yet with a suspended, not an abolished, expression on them, faces rather in a fearful pause, as having yet to raise the dropped lids of the eyes, and bear witness to the bloodless lips. Thou didst it. 7 prisoners released, 7 gory heads on pikes, the keys of the accursed fortress, of the 8 strong towers, some discovered letters and other memorials of prisoners of old time, long dead of broken hearts, such and such like, the loudly echoing footsteps of Saint Antoine escort through the Paris streets in mid-July, 1789. Now, heaven defeat the fancy of Lucy Darnay, and keep these feet far out of her life, for they are headlong, mad, and dangerous, and in the years so long after the breaking of the cask at Defarge's wine-shop door, they are not easily purified when once stained red. And that is the end of chapter 21.